Well, welcome everyone to Black and White, a primarily comics conversation podcast, but we get into kind of everything here. My name's Ward, and I'm here with Jack. Jack's Pancreas here, and we're two best friends and just nerdy guys in general. So we just wanted to record a podcast and get into some conversations. This is going to be primarily a comics focused first episode, but so Jack, how are you doing? Are you ready to go, man? I've been looking forward to this.
I've been looking forward to this too. I'm so glad we're finally doing this. We have enough spirited conversations just amongst ourselves that I'm excited to kind of document these conversations for a small percentage of people in the world to listen to at their leisure.
For sure, and we're hoping
hopefully they get a little bit of entertainment out of it.
Hopefully they get some entertainment, and we hope to engage with you as well too. On Discord when we get there, whatever we're gonna do,
we got all kinds of plans and stuff we can. There's ways to connect. We'll have those at a later date, TBD.
For sure.
See if y'all listen first.
For sure. So I think the first thing we kind of wanted to talk about is just maybe our general love of comics, and primarily we're going to talk about and we're going to have a couple topics this upcoming week, but we're going to talk about the differences between paper and digital comics, and it's kind of a hot button thing. But I think we're going to spend this first segment talking.
This is versus. This is paper versus digital.
Okay. Well, first we're going to talk about exactly our love of the paper comic medium. So Dave's going to come up here and probably talk about how he's a digital comic guy. But guys, I just want you to know, this is my 9th time collecting Walking Dead. So I love, and I can keep going. There's 12 covers.
For those of you not watching this on YouTube, the man just put in front of the camera multiple issues of the re-release in color Walking Dead comics that are we're just trying to get money from collectors at this point. The strategy there, I think.
100%. So do you want to start, or I can start? It's up to you, man.
Sure, I'll start. So
sure, I want you to start.
And really this is going to go deep into how I first got into the comic medium in the first place. I remember it clear as day. I was grocery shopping with my mom and my grandma. I had never even thought about comic books before. I was a dorky kid. I was into video games and all that kind of stuff. And I saw a comic on the rack in the grocery store that just caught my eye. It was Thor. I forget the issue number.
Really?
That's awful that I can't remember the issue number, because that's a memory this vivid. I should know the issue number, but I know that it was the first issue after Thor was no longer Thor. There was a new Thor. It was the bearded Thor, now known as
Eric Magnuson. Thunderson, right? Yeah, Eric Magnuson or whatever.
Yeah. And the cover, Thor was on the cover, and he was, kind of in power stance. He had his hammer out to his side, screaming out into the world. And I was like, that's so badass. I want that. So my grandma bought it for me, and I read it on the ride home from the store, and I instantly fell in love. And I got super deep into comics. I was 11 years old. I got super deep into comics very, very quickly. It quickly took over my life. It was a bit of an obsession, but getting that new issue in hand and curling up in bed, or I used to love to I outside and read in the summer. I'm from Pennsylvania. I live in Texas now. I was originally from Pennsylvania, and I've got so many fond memories of just summer mornings on a folding chair on the front porch, reading comic books, and going to the comic book shop, and the smell of a comic book shop, and the smell of the back issue bins, and the smell of a new comic. There's so many warm fuzzy memories associated with collecting comic books, and the places and the stories that you got to go and experience. I truly do love paper. I love paper comics, and there's something about, and people that collect books will say the same thing. They love the smell of a bookstore. There's a closely related things, but that's kind of where my love of comics started.
Damn, man. It's good.
Those deep rooted childhood memories.
Yeah. So one thing I was thinking was, do you remember the approximate cover price when they were coming out for you?
$1.25 when I first started reading comics.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So $1.25.
Something stupid. Yeah. Not $3.99 and $4.99, that's for sure.
I got I picked up this week Lion and Eagle by Greg Rucka. It's this World War II comic, really good, $7.99. So I was just curious, like what it was like for you. So yeah, comics for me, definitely. I was around comics when I was younger. My dad, when we would actually visit Rochester, where I live now, there's like a newsstand right in the city, and he would always buy me comics. He would buy me primarily Power Man and Iron Fist. We like that. Some of the ones I specifically remember though were the '90s, just when it was Cage. It's badass. It's
Oh
just
yeah,
Cage was the
yeah, I remember
series,
that.
and
And
I remember
he was very '90s looking too.
yes,
The costume redesign in the '90s was very '90s. It sounds like a
yes,
stupid thing to say, but like
no,
it was like
no,
a
100%.
quintessential '90s redesign for Luke Cage.
Because I remember like the tiara and the Iron Fist, and him wearing the tiara, and Iron Fist being in the book. But like I specifically, like I have him in the basement, like the Cage ones he had that my dad would buy me. So that was at Worldwide News in Rochester. But not to get too emotional, I really got into comics when I met this guy. I remember after one of our shifts at GameStop, and that's how I knew we were meant to be. We went to an old place called the Fox and the Hound, and Dave sat down with me and he's like, "Yo, like, have you ever really read comics?" I'm like, "No, like I've always been a geeky guy. I like the video games and stuff, and like Spider-Man and X-Men. I loved all that stuff." But he's like, "No, like, I want you to read this Watchmen." And I can't remember if you bought it for me or whatever, but like
I
I
don't
ended
remember
up getting
either.
Watchmen. And like that was truly where I fell in love, I think, with the medium of comics, because it wasn't just capes. And I will always collect capes and spandex, but like that was like truly that's what you give to anyone who like looks down on comics and is like, this is kid stuff.
Yeah,
Like
it's
that
almost
is
like
a
you're proving a point to somebody when
you're
you make them
proving a
read
point.
Watchmen.
That you're proving a point to someone when you make them read Watchmen, because like that's actually reading. So from there, um, me and Dave hit it off, and Dave would just have like recommendations. This was late 2000 to 2009 ish. Like I was in college still. And like one of our seminal moments, and I know Dave remembers these, where we would go to Grove City every once in a while and doing the comic drive
Oh
with Dave.
yeah.
We would go to Grove City. There was this place that would sell $5 trade paperbacks or half
I don't
price
even
trade
remember the
paperbacks.
name of that place. It was some random
And
bookstore in the outlet mall.
I was broke. I mean, I would take my GameStop money, and we had refund check money from college. I would go and just stock up. Secret
Yeah.
Invasion, Captain America Civil War, all that kind of stuff. That was our comic drive. And then we go get Five Guys. That's what we did. And that was like how we ran. And then
Good
from there,
times, man. Good
no, no, I
times.
know. And that's what I'm saying. Like we would always just hit up local comic shops when Dave would move to Syracuse or Canton. We always like, hey, let's just go look at a comic shop when we're there. And that was just, something that we
Dude, that
were,
that place in Grove City spoiled me though for sure.
oh
Like
yeah,
when you start out being able to just get irresponsible on $5 trade paperbacks,
that's
like
exactly what it
you
was.
go to
That's
a you go to a
exactly,
comic book shop that doesn't have any discounted trade paperbacks, and you're like, what is this? What do you think
exactly.
you're doing? Why
That's
aren't these
exact
cheaper?
that. And yeah, like,
It really spoils you.
I
But
mean,
it's a
this
great
is
way to
another
like to build a collection quickly.
and I think this is another conversation, like a kind of heady conversation we'll have at another time. But I think there's a direct correlation between like people's enjoyment with comics and how much money they actually spend on comics, and we'll touch on that a little bit. Like, dude,
Okay.
I got topics for days that we can talk about, so I'm glad we're doing this. But I think the other thing that kind of got me in, well, that was definitely seminal. And then the Walking Dead TV show, before the show came out, and I heard about kind of what the premise of the show was. I went and got a lot of the trade paperbacks and read, and that was like my introduction to Kirkman. We can do a whole other topic on Kirkman if we
And we
really
probably
wanted
will.
to, and we probably will. But that was where I was really introduced to Kirkman. And then Dave taught me about Invincible, which we can do our power ranking of all time greatest series. That is still my number one, I think.
Mine too.
But Walking Dead was changed, great art, profanity, like just a really
Violence.
good story, violence. And I shared my Walking Dead trades with my roommate Sean, who Dave knows, and like I would just, whoever wanted to read them, I just give them out. So yeah, that was like
I've done the same thing with
paper for me.
Invincible. I've bought in volume
Yeah,
1 of Invincible for a lot of people to
exactly.
make them read that comic.
And I do, and I enjoy reading paper comics. We'll
And
get into it later, but it's
honestly,
just
that's sorry,
space.
go ahead.
No,
That's another really great benefit to the paper comic is that
here you
you
go.
you can and gifting somebody something like that, especially if it's like something that really means a lot to you. Like as stupid as it might sound to some people, Invincible, the comic, means a lot to me. And to be able to physically buy that for someone and hand it to them and go, I really think you'll like this and I want you to read it. There's power in being able to gift somebody something sentimental like that. And obviously you can't do that with the digital rights to reading something on your iPad. Like, it's just not the same. It's not the same.
I mean, you can buy things, but I know what you're saying. Like, it's like one thing when like you get, or even just to borrow, you were like, hey, like, here's Invincible, like, trade one. I want you to try it out. And I see like the wear and like the love that you put into it, like that's what I think we're about. So
there's also more effort, I think, that goes into gifting physical like that. Like, I had to go to the store. I thought about you. I had to go to the store.
Yep.
I made a purchase. I wrapped it up, assuming I did because it was a gift.
Yeah.
And then I made a point to come to see you to give you the gift. Whereas with a digital gifted comic, I went on Comixology and I sent you the code in email to download it. It just doesn't feel as personal or as impactful.
I also think too, kind of just maybe to like wrap up and close, that thought process that you put into it. Like, if I get a physical good, I think there's an inherent value there than when it's something that's like digital. Like, that's very easy for me to forget that if it's on my iPad and like I download it, whatever, I forget about it. But you gifted me a physical good, like I see that on my bookshelf or I see that in my house. And I'm like, man, I got to read that. So I think that's also a big part of it. But
there's one other thing too I want to talk about with paper and why I love paper comics. The collecting of something, the thrill of the hunt. You've got a series that you just found and you've decided, oh my God, I want to own every single one of these issues.
Yep.
So then you get to go, and only other collectors know what this feels like, but the fun of driving around to different comic shops, or you're in a city that you don't live in for work or on vacation or whatever, and you find a comic shop that has a key issue you've been hunting for years. That the thrill of finding those gaps in your collection and filling them. Obviously, this doesn't exist with digital, because if it's available digitally, you're not fighting for a limited print run. It's just there for you to buy. But with paper, there's like accomplishment and there's some sentimentality and more emotional connection that comes with filling a run. One of the things that I'm currently trying to do is fill out the Volume 1 TMNT Mirage run, which is going to get expensive.
Yeah, but it's going to get expensive.
A lot of those issues, and IDW is doing a great job reprinting all of that old stuff that's hard to find. But, a lot of those original issues, even second and third prints of the original issues, have very limited print runs just due to the nature of it being one of the first very successful independent comics, and the time that it came out. There wasn't a speculator's market as much as there is today, or even in the 90s for that matter. So, I was in Alaska on vacation 4 years ago, found a comic shop in Anchorage, and they had like 6 issues of that TMNT run that I didn't have yet, that I hadn't ever seen before in any shops here in Texas. And I snatched them up, I packed them in my suitcase and brought them home with me. And that's like one of the best memories that I have from that vacation, for a lot of reasons that we'll never get into on this podcast.
Yeah.
But I know all the reasons. However, one of the best memories of a vacation to Alaska is finding some Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles comic books, which, is something that you just don't get with a digital good.
So we went to a little ice sculpting festival about an hour ago and took my daughter and my wife. We had a good time. It's in Canandaigua, which is like 30 minutes from us. But one of the things that's great about Canandaigua is there's this really nice comic shop there. And I read most of my Cape stuff digitally, but I've been searching for this Nick Spencer Hunted Amazing Spider-Man run. I'm sorry, it's not coming.
Yeah, that's not. You got to back that up. I think no matter what, in the bag, it's going to
be glary. But
put your sunglasses on, everybody.
I completed it. And I feel
for those only listening to the audio, my man's is holding up more comics. He came with props. I didn't know I had to bring props to this. I've got props on the wall. I didn't bring comics to put in front of the camera and say, I love this.
I have like my short boxes right down here next to where I record. But yeah.
Mine aren't far
So
away. Mine are just in the other room. They're literally 6 feet away. But I'm not gonna get up and walk over there now. We're in the middle of this thing.
so one last thing, I guess, for you, what is do you and spoilers, we both read a lot digitally, but is there something that like you will always pretty much collect physically from here on out, or are you getting to the point where there's so many relaunches and renumberings, I don't really care, like it is what it is? Or you talked about that TMNT run, that's something you're
Yeah,
collecting, so that's
yeah.
cool. But
But
um
like you're talking like
like
current,
on I was thinking
like
like
current.
ongoing series, is there
Yeah.
like, hey, I'm always gonna get Spider-Man or something like that? Like, do you have
So
anything like that? Or
coincidentally, Amazing Spider-Man was one of the comics that I would have said that about until very recently. That
yeah.
the Nick Spencer run, like all 70 some issues of it, uh, started out really strong for me, and then by the end of it, I was just waiting for it to wrap up. Like I did not
Gotcha.
enjoy a lot of the end of that run, and that actually made me stop buying Amazing Spider-Man in paper. And I have a very very large chunk of that run. Like you're talking probably somewhere in the early 200s through about 2 months ago. I've got the entire run. Um, Captain Marvel, Carol
Yeah,
Danvers.
that was the one I was gonna
That's one
say.
I'll always get in paper. If Kirkman ever goes back to Invincible, I'll obviously get that in paper. I'll continue to buy Saga in paper.
Yeah.
Um, maybe the Miles Morales Spider-Man stuff for now. I'm still getting. I have a lot of that in paper. But really, like if I'm buying current comics, most of that stuff is probably subject to a space making cut from the team exercise later in life. And I've just recently done one of those too. And we can get into that later. But
Sure.
what about you? You buy way more paper than I do now.
Yeah, I definitely do now. Um, Pretty much Invincible, like you said. I think for like superhero, like Batman, I cut, and that took me a long time to cut, but I've recently cut Batman out. But
It's a
I'd say
shame.
the one character that I just think is always well written, a Dave recommendation, and I think up until like recently, I've discovered is my favorite superhero is Daredevil. Like Daredevil is just
Interesting.
always he's always well
I actually
written,
never would have guessed you were going to say that. I was thinking
dude.
something goofy like Superman was going to come out of your mouth.
No, Daredevil by far. I get the tie-in series. I've liked the whole Chip Zdarsky run. There's a
Okay.
couple kind of weak issues towards the end, but I think that's the one guy between the Wade Insomnia run before, Brubaker stuff, the Bendis
Bendis,
stuff.
yeah.
Like, there's really, it's just a well written book. So I
Yeah.
think that's the one
I mean,
until,
there's some bad Daredevil if you go back to the
yeah, oh, for
90s.
sure. For sure.
There's a lot of bad Daredevil out there.
Well, I didn't read that stuff, but
I wish I wouldn't have.
I think the nature of how they do things now, it's like almost like if it's a bad writer, they're going to do a number one. It's like, all right, I won't jump into
Yeah,
that.
aren't
But
they
if
already
it's,
relaunching Daredevil
they
to do
are
number
in
one?
May. Yep,
Yeah.
they're
So
relaunching it. So I don't
I mean,
know.
I do appreciate that Marvel has the legacy numbering on all of the issues too. But
Yeah,
we could do a whole episode about how much I hate relaunches. It would
I
just
would
be
love
me
to hear
just
that.
talking shit for 30 to 45 minutes.
I'd love to hear it.
I
Love
don't
to
think
hear
anybody
it.
else does.
Do you be surprised?
Maybe I would. Maybe I would. All right. So do you want to move? You want to move to topic two, which is
For sure.
sort of the advent of digital and how that's
Yeah.
kind of changed over the years.
So when you mentioned digital, we were going to talk about this. The before even Comixology and stuff, I honestly thought about was like webtoons and stuff like that, like those web comics. And
Hmm.
I don't know like a lot of them. I just remember when I was listening, and I still listen to a lot of podcasts, but back in the day when I was in college, I'd listen to a lot of comics and they or a lot of podcasts, and they talk about this series called The Private Eye, and I think that was Ed Brubaker, and that was just like one of the first web digital comic things that I heard of, and I've never read it, but that was like digital comics. I think of that series for whatever reason, but
Okay.
really, I think for the purpose and sake of this conversation, we're going to talk a lot about like Comixology, and I think that is for me. We'll get into this later, but the Comixology app was the most stable, best working comic app. Like comics were serious when they got on Comixology because they would constantly update the app, improve it, XYZ. It was founded in about 2007, so that's obviously like I'm just
So
some of the big
we're
high
talking
points.
15 years or so
Yep.
of modernized
This
digital
is
comics.
oh gosh, this is gonna get so ugly. But yes, 15
All
years of
right.
modernized digital comics. So 2007 was a big one. Another big marker that isn't like if you Wikipedia, you find, information. I think one of the big things that happened was in 2011, and that coincided with the DC New 52, and they announced Jim Lee, I believe, and Dan Didio. They announced that like they were doing day and date comics, and I remember that specifically because I was reading a lot of DC at the time, and I would buy those issues that were a dollar more because they included a digital copy. So I would always have a digital
This man
copy
was
and the
double dipping.
paper, double dipping. So like I remember that date pretty clearly. That not date, but that year pretty clearly because of that. Because it was, and honestly, it wasn't the whole line, but it was the big books. It was Justice League, Green Lantern, Batman, Superman, like the main hitters
And
had
that
those
was
codes
before
in.
Marvel
Yeah.
started offering digital codes with everything,
And I
right?
think so. I think so. Yeah. I'm pretty sure like because DC was the first one. I was like, whoa, like I can double dip, like I can get it in paper. And then if I do get I go through these waves with paper, I'll collect it and then I'll get rid of it. But this way I at least had a backup digitally. So I'm like, that way I'm not buying the same thing over and over. It's just a dollar more. And then when you're at an LCS, you get a discount anyway. So it kind of whatever.
Yeah.
So that was one thing. I think 2018, yeah, that was the other date I had. 2018 is when they kind of started the Comixology's like original program, which I think is really cool. They have pretty much comics that are Comixology paid creators, and there's like exclusive comics digitally on that platform. So Scott Snyder is a big one. He has like 5 or 6 series, I think, on Comixology. He has a Best Jacket Presses what his like label or icon is or whatever.
How does that
And he
man
put,
have time to write so many comics? Like,
dude,
I
I
don't
don't know.
understand it. Like, I know that's so off topic, but like, what doesn't he
Very
write?
verbose too.
Like, he
Very
writes, yeah,
verbose writing too.
yeah.
Like
Like,
it's not.
is this man like is he Einsteining it? Like, he sleeps 3 hours a night? Like, I don't understand.
And I think he's got like 2 or 3 kids too, married. Like I don't know how he finds the time to do all that, but
I'm not
um,
married and I don't have kids, and I barely have time to do anything. It feels like
yeah,
this man writes about 15 monthly comics and a bunch of miniseries.
yeah.
I mean,
So like
I
he's
guess that's
on,
why he is where he is in life, and that's why I am where I am, I suppose. But
I guess.
there's probably a talent and dedication gap there that I have not closed
Yeah.
and never will.
Well, you're writing every waking minute of your life, right? So like, yeah, there's
Anyway, sorry,
some
I totally drew you off sides. I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
no, no, man. Like there's some great creators on there, like him. Chip Zdarsky has a series on there as well too, which I need to read. But Comixology really like HD scans was one of the things. Like very high quality images. The guided view technology is revolutionary for people who do some reading on their phone or their tablet. If you like to zoom in, it's just going to take you panel by panel to give you kind of more of a cinematic flair. That was like something that was big on Comixology. I was just saying, like, when I would come visit you, like, I can take literally thousands of comics on the go with me, and I don't have to have an entire, you know, literally long box taking with me, but a bunch of paper. It's just on my tablet. I take that with me and I can read and charge my tablet and I can go. So yeah, digital comics are a big thing. I think it's some movement. I think there will always be paper, but you're starting to see on the DC app, for example, they're actually releasing some of their series on the DC
Yeah,
Infinite app,
it's digital first and then
digital
paper.
first. Well, there's like their digital first that are normally like the cheaper comics, but like there's like a Peacemaker one shot I read, and it was on DC Infinite like the day it came out in the comic stores, and I thought it was an error, and that's a $6 book. So like I literally paid for that whole month reading that one book. And there's like a Titans United series that the art is really cool, and it's just like a cool story on there, day and date. So like I think it's like that correlated with like the Titan show you were watching, and like
Hmm.
obviously Peacemaker's big right now, so that's why they did that. So like,
Well, I'm pretty sure
I'm
the Injustice comic was digital first too.
it definitely was.
I don't know if the whole
Um,
thing was because that lasted much longer than I would have expected it to. Which, by the way, it was fantastic.
all right, then I need
Tom
to add
Tom
that.
Taylor, I think it's Tom Taylor.
It is.
Uh, fantastic. I love the games. I played both Injustice games. I played the hell out of those games. But the Injustice comics are absolutely worth the read. I love them.
Quality art too, because like
Yeah. Oh yeah.
there's like the digital first that are like they're horizontal and they're normally shorter in scope. They release them like once a week or whatever. Like I read one with Elena. We read Batman Scooby Doo every night. Like that's what we're trying to
Nice.
read. So like those are like 99-cent comics or whatever, and they put them out once a week. But like this Peacemaker was like a legit comic book. It was a vertical comic book that you scrolled through like 40 pages, like, and that's how the Titan one was too, like a 23-page real comic book. So I'm curious to see where. Well, I didn't even do a lot of research on this stuff, but like Marvel and DC also have apps.
Mhm.
Marvel Unlimited and DC Universe Infinite. I have all of these apps because I read a lot. So I've rambled enough, Dave. I want you to talk a little bit.
All right. Okay. Okay. So I think the first thing I'm hitting my mic. The first thing that I think I want to talk about when it comes to digital is sort of like my initial thoughts because I've always been uh, a passionate person, and I tend to um, have impassioned discussions about my opinions, whether I'm right or wrong. I like a good spirited conversation. And when digital comics first came to be, and thank you so much for doing some of that research because I was
No
really
problem.
curious, what the timeline was for some of that stuff because I truly have no idea, I have no concept of when digital started, but I know I hated the idea of it.
You sure did.
I hated it. Why you would ever replace something so pure and beautiful as the paper comic book? My brain, my tiny little lizard brain, could not understand, and I was mad. Like I was like unreasonably mad about this because I just couldn't. I it didn't make sense to me. You can't hold it. You don't get to own it. Like you own the rights to it. A big deal. Okay, so what if Marvel decides later they want to unpublish this book digitally? Then I just lose it. Cool. Like I guess I lose. Like didn't seem like the type of thing that was fair to the the true. I'm air quoting right now for those just listening. Like the true comic fan, which is what I considered myself to be in all of my hubris. Um, but I started to use Comixology for like I'm gonna call it
Mm.
like gap filling. Like
Oh
if
yeah.
Marvel was doing an event, um, and they've as the classic comic book crossover has died a very slow and untimely death, in my opinion. It's been replaced by the big summer event, and it's many, many, many 3 to 4 issue tie-in series. So you would have, like you mentioned, Secret Invasion earlier. There were a ton of like Secret Invasion X-Men, Secret Invasion Spider-Man, and all of these little minis that tied into Secret Invasion but weren't required reading. So that's how I started to use specifically Comixology, but um, how I would handle like the digital comic. I would not want to own the paper versions of those tie-in miniseries, but I still wanted to read them, so I would just buy them on Comixology. And I didn't get a discount for buying those because they weren't on my pull list at the place where I buy my comics. But I also didn't have to deal with them being in my house, so I would just buy it digitally and I'd read it digitally. And that was sort of my first foray into digital, and I enjoyed the digital reading experience. You mentioned guided view. I really like the guided view. And that was pretty much all I used Comixology for a while. Eventually, I would start to buy, when they have a lot of great sales on Comixology. Every week, there's multiple sales happening, multiple. So I would start to buy the occasional trade paperback, or if there was a comic that I wanted to try out, but wasn't ready to commit to adding to a pull list, I'd buy a digital number one and read it just to see if I liked it. And then um, we went to New York Comic Con, with our friend Paul. That was in 2013 or 2014. You're
I want to say
muted.
2014. I want to say 2014.
Yeah, I think somewhere in there. Because I was living in Syracuse, New York at the time, and I lived in Syracuse from 2012 to 2015. So somewhere in that range. And at New York Comic Con, there was a booth, and they were doing signups. Like it was like $65 for a year of Marvel Unlimited, and you got like this little welcome gift box with like some exclusive comics and an action figure or whatever. I still have a picture of you and I standing in front of Sam
Captain
Wilson,
America.
Captain America. Yeah, yeah. It was right next to where their sign up booth was at for this Marvel Unlimited special. And I did it because, I was at Comic Con and it was like a little weekend getaway and I was spending a lot of money irresponsibly. And I was like, screw it. What's another $60? I've spent hundreds of dollars this weekend already, whatever. And that was sort of where I started to fall in love with the idea of digital comics. Because now I had the entire library almost of Marvel at my fingertips. And then, it was 6 months after release, the comic would show up on Comixology. So I wasn't reading anything current. But if there was a series that I was interested in, I could wait 6 months to read it. And I started to read, stuff that I had missed out on, or I was trying new things, and there wasn't really a hard cost associated with it because it's like $5 a month. Big deal. And I think that was when I started to turn to the dark side a little bit, for lack of a better term, because it started slow, and there was many years. I didn't keep Marvel Unlimited every year since then. For a
You
while.
would drop out. I remember
Yeah,
you'd be all about it, drop it. You're like, oh,
yeah.
I'm getting it back into it, like
Right.
in
And
and
the
out.
reason that would happen was I would get so into the convenience of reading on my iPad. Like I'd just get in bed and I'd read a few issues on my iPad before I fall asleep at night. I wasn't reading anything on paper. I was still getting, and I haven't mentioned this yet, but I don't have an LCS that I go to. I get my paper comics 100% through online pre-order. So that stuff, I was getting every 2 weeks. I'm getting paper comics delivered to my front door, literally, and I wasn't reading any of it. I was just reading it digitally. So I'd have to take digital breaks. I'd have to just get rid of the subscription so I could catch up on reading all the paper. Because I really did start to enjoy the digital experience more in terms of the convenience and just the guided view. Um, I was absorbing and retaining more, and I was enjoying the experience more.
It's interesting. That's
It's
interesting. I
also
think I
like
retain
it
more on
wasn't a great
paper.
feeling for someone that I have so many warm fuzzies about my experience as a kid reading paper comics, and I still love to read paper comics, but the digital experience started to be something that I was enjoying more.
That's interesting because I remember talking about digital comics and just getting absolutely just demolished
Oh yeah, I
by
know.
some of
I said all kinds of crazy
you're
shit.
just
I know that.
very impassioned. This is how me and Dave's conversations normally go. I get steamrolled, and that's probably going to happen.
That's not always what
But
happens.
that's interesting though. Like I didn't know, I, I never knew like why you got interested. So that's I never knew that was like all the little tie-in miniseries of Civil War. Like that's like
Yeah.
300 issues if you literally sat down and read everything. No kidding. Like I've mapped it out and looked at it. So that is interesting for sure. And I also wanted to say you got that 12.9, right? iPad.
hmm Yeah, iPad Pro.
How much better is that reading experience on that device?
Well, I'm planning on talking about that once we get to this this
Okay.
this wrap up section. Whenever we get
Because
to
I
that.
because I think that's a huge thing is not having the appropriate device to read. Because I feel
I'm
like if you have a
slouching.
device, and that's not a cheap device, but if you have a device like that, I think it's a lot different than reading on the iPad 6 that I had years ago. Almost one for one with a comic page. It's just
See, that's where
it
you
is
and
a
I are
really
different
good
though. I
experience.
don't do the full page on my iPad. I'm
See,
still
yeah,
I'm panel by panel guided view 100%.
really
hmm
okay. I think you miss out. Well, I know you miss out on art. That's the only thing if you go panel by panel, but the surprise is there on the guided view more, which
hmm
is a good thing,
hmm
you know. So
And some of the things that Marvel's done digitally, I don't care about getting a digital code in a paper comic because
put
I
it in
am
there.
such a traditionalist nerd collector. I won't I won't take the code
Rip
out
it.
and use it because I don't want to like I don't want to
It does
undo the
drop the value.
integrity of the comic, even
It
though
does drop the value.
I've gotten over that since then, obviously, because you and I had a fun little arrangement where I was just sending you digital codes for paper comics for about 6 months. We had
Yeah.
a dirty little game we were playing with Marvel. They didn't even know.
Takes two to tango.
It's true. I'll just real quick explain it so people know what we're talking about. So I would get my every 2 weeks order from my online pre-orders, and then I would literally type the codes into a spreadsheet in Google Drive so Matt could then take the codes and redeem them and read them on his iPad. And he would pay me half of what I was paying for the comics. So I was already getting 40% off for the pre-order, and then I was getting half of what I actually paid back from Matt. So everybody won except Marvel. Please do not come after us, Marvel Comics. We just love your comics so much. It was just we just wanted to read more. It wasn't about theft, although it was in fact technically, I think, maybe theft. It was well-intentioned theft.
Exactly.
For the love of the medium.
So yeah, you mentioned Marvel 6 months. Now it's down to, as of 2021, it's at 3 months, which I can wait 3 months. Like that is one thing. The DC service, which is DC Infinite, they are at 6 months still. I'm waiting for that to go to 3 months because I'm dropping some DC like hot potatoes at that cake.
And if anyone listening or watching this has been living under a rock and doesn't know, Comixology is like day and date, whatever you want. Like,
yeah,
there's like
full retail price.
Yeah, there's a Comixology Unlimited option, but it's not for new comics. If you're buying comics on Comixology, you just buy whatever you want the day it comes out.
Marvel is like $9 and DC's $7 a month. But if you do an annual sub, they're both around like $6. The reason I know this is because I have a spreadsheet and I track this stuff to see.
Yes, you do.
How much
the man
am
loves
I taking
spreadsheets.
full advantage of these? Yes.
If there's something that impacts this man's life, he has made a spreadsheet to track it.
Exactly.
I've seen it. It's not. I'm not embellishing this. I'm not making this up. This man just lives in spreadsheets.
I do live in spreadsheets. I love the spreadsheet, but
it's a good tool. I like a good spreadsheet too. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with digital.
Okay. I have all 3 subscription services, so I'm good. The only thing I'm missing is Viz for manga, but I don't have time to read manga.
Yeah, no, I'm not. I'll never be that guy. Never be that guy. There is some on Comixology.
There is.
Like I've on Unlimited. I downloaded the first volume of Attack on Titan.
Yeah. I feel like if there's some manga, I can just pay for it because I don't read that much of it. Yeah. So
yeah,
do it that way. But
so do we want to move on? Do we want to wrap this up? We'll head to the verdict on paper versus digital. And it doesn't have to be a quick verdict.
Okay.
Because I've got a lot of thoughts still. There's not.
Okay. I'm going to let you spit. I'm going to let you just go. Can I just start with Comixology?
Please do.
With this update?
Yeah, let's get that out of the way because we both hate that.
Okay. I have like a whole pros and cons section about digital, but I have Comixology stuff. I would like to think in this podcast moving forward, we are not going to be an outrage channel that is just like everything is bad, all that kinds of stuff. Because I listen to some channels like that and I do find entertainment out of it, but like that's not really what we want to stand for. I don't think. I want to be here for the love of comics and talk about the things I do like and all that stuff.
Yeah, same.
With that being said, Comixology recently did an update as of like last week. I think it's honestly one of the most disrespectful and disgraceful things I've ever seen in my entire life. The equivalent that I would compare this to, if you're a video gamer, primarily an Xbox gamer, would be the Halo Master Chief Collection when it launched, and it was fundamentally broken. This program has taken significant steps backwards. Like this is a new UI and you need to understand it. Like this is fundamentally broken, in my opinion, as someone who was kind of on Comixology from the ground floor. They promised there's faster downloads and less storage taken up on your device. Neither of that's true. If you're an overseas person in Europe or whatever, a different country outside of North America, there's no longer subscriptions. So people like, I am a spreadsheet guy. I keep track of everything. I know what Batman issue is coming out this month. But some people are like, hey, I just want Batman and I want to subscribe to it and get it and charge my credit card. That's gone. There's no more of that. People, I think, have lost their purchases. Granted, I think in
Yeah,
fairness to
everything got removed from
Comixology,
my iPad. Everything I had
yep.
downloaded is gone.
Oh yeah, that's
Re-download all of it.
definitely true. If you had anything downloaded, you had to re-download. So we both have the large iPad Pro. So I had gigs and gigs and gigs of stuff all gone, starting from the ground floor. But what I was talking about is like people's literal purchases have been gone, and I think I will give Amazon / Comixology a little bit of credit. Like pretty much what that is, I think, is syncing your Amazon and Comixology accounts together, which
But you had to do that. You were forced to do that. There was no way. There's no way not to.
You had to do it. One of the major contentions that I have, and I searched this morning, there's no way to download DRM free copies anymore of comics, and that is a big one for me. This goes back to us talking about like the owning of the comic. I'm okay of like not physically, obviously having. Well, I do like my paper, but not physically having the good, but at least being able to save things on the hard drive. That's no longer as of right now. You have to download the Kindle infrastructure, which I think is archaic as all hell. I do a lot of reading, like at work or on my computer. If I have like over a lunch break and I want to read an issue, I would pull up the web browser and read it. You have to download the Kindle app, which is atrocious. It's atrocious. Like I have thousands of comics that I've had since 2009. I know I have over like probably 2000. I downloaded that, put it on my computer, and and my accounts are synced up. I had 200 comics, and that is, I could literally go on about this for days. This is a cynical, purely financial move on their part because they did not want to support the regular app, so they just wanted to fold everything as once. And
Amazon doesn't care.
The beautiful store that they used to have for digital comics, it's just the Amazon store. So good luck when
it's just Amazon.com now.
Good luck when you want to read Batman #1 and you type Batman in and it pulls up pajamas and toothpaste and action. So I've waited all week to get this off of my chest. At the end of the day, I'm going to keep Comixology Unlimited because there are some series, like I'm reading that TMNT run that you're talking about, the new ongoing series. I got a bunch of it. So I'm reading up to where I'm at, where I have my paper issues and some G.I. Joe Real American Hero. After that, I might be done. And that's saying a lot for me. I've had that since Unlimited for at least 3 years now. And I've been pumping money into that for a long time, but it's so bad that I'm done. Like independent, I'll just collect it in paper because there were some other people that this was their fear of what can happen, that someone can just overnight flip a switch, completely change things. You have no DRM free comics.
I mentioned that earlier. That's one of the things that I didn't like the idea about digitals, that it's just gone.
You don't own any of it. And that was me like coming back on you back in the day and be like, dude, that will never happen. Like, that's not how this works. Well, guess what, people? It happened. And it happened in a real way this week. So
it did.
I can't believe it. And if you're going to read things on Unlimited, that makes sense, because my perspective moving forward is I will pay to have like a streaming service, just like a Netflix, to enjoy it. But like, you don't own anything. And I learned that lesson this week. You truly do not own anything.
Yep.
I cede the floor to you, sir.
So my Comixology Unlimited subscription is already canceled. Literally, I downloaded the update, and then I looked at the web store. I'm air quoting again, web store, because it's just a hub within Amazon.com. And then I canceled my subscription instantly. Took no time at all for me to make that decision. Hell no. Then I left negative reviews about the app.
Oh, wow.
And I went about my life. The only way for this to improve is to speak with my wallet. and that is to remove the money that's funding those decisions. I know that everybody that I've talked to universally despises what has just happened. I have another friend similar to you. He's got a bunch of Star Wars stuff downloaded on Unlimited. It's like, once I finish reading all of this Star Wars stuff, I'm canceling Unlimited and I'm going to go to Marvel Unlimited because there's a bunch of Star Wars stuff on there, and it's actually a good reading experience. There's not a single thing that I like about the shopping experience for digital comics via Comixology, because Comixology no longer exists. Comixology is just now a branded shopping experience on Amazon.com.
It's a
And
good
that's
way to
all that
put
it
it.
is now.
It is. It truly is. And that's um it's sad. I'm almost like pushing through on Comixology to get through those issues of TMNT and GI Joe so I can cancel it before I get charged in March, because like that's how bad it is. Like I can't believe it. Like I just they should have just left well enough alone and just kept this old archaic mat. And I haven't like really done a lot of reading. Apparently, you can't do double page spreads anymore, like, which is an essential thing of the comic book. So like, it will take just one panel and you flip it and scroll and it's another panel.
It's
Like,
perfect. Perfect. Exactly what you would want out of your digital reading experience. I did read a little bit last night, or 2 nights ago. I'm still making my way through a future pod topic. I
okay,
won't spoil it, but I was reading the thing we've been talking about reading, that I've already started. And
okay.
one thing that I
Oh,
did like, I would be remiss if I didn't say there was at least one thing that I liked. So I was starting to get tired, and I was in the middle of the issue, and I was like, man, how much how much of this is left? Like, do I have
the
do I have the
percentage.
fortitude to stay up and awake and finish this issue that I'm in the middle of? So it's, you just single tap back and you have like the Kindle view where you have all the pages. So I was swiping forward to see how many pages were left. Once I saw how many pages were left, I loved this one convenient feature. There was a little rectangle that says go back to page 249. And I tapped it, and it took me right back to the panel that I was reading when I zoomed
Really?
out
Oh, I didn't
to
know
go
that.
forward. That is
That's
literally
cool.
the only positive thing I can say about the experience so far. Everything else sucks. It universally sucks. They I was, and I have been, systematically removing paper from my life, whether it's parts of my collection that I no longer want anymore that I've had for years, or the the monthly comics that I'm ordering via mail order, which I now currently, I'll shout out Lone Star Comics in Arlington, Texas, mycomicshop.com. That's who I use for all of my online pre-orders. They're fantastic. They get me stuff as fast as they can when they have to deal with using the United States Postal Service, which is the worst possible shipping experience ever. Um, I used to use DCBS. I will never use that company again. Lone Star Comics or Midtown Comics. Those are probably the two best mail order experiences if you are someone that wants to start reading comics and doesn't want to find an LCS, because that's probably another episode of the pod upcoming. We talk about how I think it's miserable to have to go and shop at an LCS, and Matt tells me how wrong I am and how much he loves it. We'll have that argument at a later date. But I've been removing my monthly comics in favor of just waiting for them to hit Marvel Unlimited, or just outright, I'll just purchase stuff digitally because it's just so much more convenient, and I enjoy. It's something that now I've started to enjoy more. I'm enjoying the digital reading experience way more than reading it in paper. And
This is
now,
crazy, man. This
like
is
this
just
week,
crazy.
Amazon, the evil empire themselves, have flipped the script on me, because now I'm not enjoying that experience as much, and I'm sort of at like, I'm at a loss as far as like what to do next. And I think probably my final verdict would be, the answer is, it's not paper versus digital, it's paper and digital, and finding the right balance and mixture for each individual person. Because, like I think you said earlier, paper's never going to go away. It'll always exist in some format.
Yeah.
And digital, while it feels like it's hitting a bit of a speed bump right now, I think digital is probably the future, and it will probably be the largest piece of the comic pie. But boy, we are not as close as I thought we were a week ago. We're really not.
So I got the venom out of my system that I needed to get out
I'm glad.
for the most part. I know you're saying that Amazon doesn't care. I feel like with the amount of negative feedback, like I just went through like in the Apple store and just went on the app and like was just scrolling through reviews. Um they have to do something. I mean, there's going to have to be a patch or something. I would assume like they're legitimately getting negative press about this now too. So when that's going to be, who knows? I really wish they would just flip the switch back to how it was before, but we know that's not going to happen. Um, but yeah, no, that I think
Can I counterpoint you real
sure,
quick? I'm so sorry
sure,
to interrupt.
no, sure,
I'm actually not that sorry. I don't think Amazon has to do anything. Jeff
yeah, I mean,
Bezos makes $8.56 million an hour. And I know
yeah,
that Jeff Bezos is not the CEO of Amazon. He has stepped away. That's not is not his title. He's not in control of the day-to-day operations. But the point that I'm trying to make is they don't need to do anything
well, it is
because
true.
they don't care. If they cared, if anybody cared, half of what just happened wouldn't have happened because at some point in the QA process or in the user acceptance testing or in beta testing, somebody would have raised their hand and said, none of this stuff makes any sense. We can't do this. And then someone
It's a
would have
good point.
said, you know what? Thank you for speaking up. Let's fix it before we launch it. But what happened was they gobbled up the gold standard in digital comics experience, um, just to make more money for themselves,
It wasn't
which is
even
going to
close.
happen with large corporations. But still, I don't have to
Yeah,
like it.
it was Comixology, Marvel Unlimited, DC Infinite for me.
I
Comixology
100%.
is now 100% at the bottom. It is unstable. DC Universe has a lot of stability issues and like it's not a fast app. Comixology is definitely at the bottom. It's not even close.
Yep.
Not even close at all.
Yeah.
Um,
It was the most depressing thing. I have on my iPad on my home screen. I saved a link to the Comixology store. So when I wanted to look at the sales, I would just click that
it's
my little
smart.
icon, and it would go right to the Comixology sales tab. Now it just takes me to Amazon.com.
Yeah.
So sad.
It's just, man, I wish DC would get to the 3 month window because it would be for those books. I have no problem just waiting 3 months.
Same. Same.
No
I don't even
problem
I've
whatsoever.
never used DC Universe Infinite. I don't know anything about it. Everything I know I've learned from you. I don't read enough DC that it's worth it for me to have that monthly subscription. But
Yeah.
if it ever if things ever change and Marvel and DC went to like a day one digital through those unlimited apps, I
Yep.
mean, I would probably forego a lot of my paper buying to just get those subscriptions.
I think the sweet spot's a month. Even you can give it to
Yeah,
the
even a
local
month,
comic
yeah.
shop for a month.
Yeah. I mean, because I'm mail order, I'm already behind about a month. I get things every 2 weeks shipped to me, but there's usually like a 1 week lag. Stuff comes out on Wednesdays, they ship it Thursday. I get it, the following Monday or Tuesday, and then the next week's books come out before I even think about reading last week's or the week before that. So
Yeah,
I'm
I feel like
perpetually about a month and a half behind.
I think for me, like I go get my stuff. Sometimes I let things kind of pile up a little bit. Like a month is the number where things get cut at that point. Like that's when things go. It's just that's the number for me. Or day and date, obviously. But
Yeah.
I would even probably play a little bit more of a premium price. For me, it would make
Yeah.
sense.
Same. I would too.
Um,
I would too.
if it's I know it's crazy, but if it was $20 a month to read everything day and date, I would do it. I would drop everything because it's been way more than that now. But I think like $10 is a
Yeah.
sweet spot
I
number.
think
But
so too. So I said kind of my piece on this. Like it's for me, it's just finding the right mix of paper and digital. I don't think it's one versus the other right now for me personally. What about you?
yeah, I think I'm literally in the same boat. I don't really have a lot to fight with you on. I probably skew a little bit more towards paper right now, but there's a lot of factors like right now, literally where it's sunny right there, this would be a great time to read outside. But it, with kids and work and wife and everything, like 8, 9 o'clock at night is when I get to read. So I can either read on my iPad or I can incorporate my new wellness initiative where I stand under a light in our kitchen and read or something like that because I have to get that optimal light for paper,
Yeah,
So
exactly. Yeah.
I think
That's important too, having the right lighting.
exactly, like I'll be in the bathroom and Crystal will come in. She'll be like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm reading." But
Bathroom's
does
got
it
the
look
best
like
lighting.
got the best light, overhead light, or the kitchen? So that's the one of the big space, obviously. But I mean, with space, when I get to your point, if there is something valuable, I would sell it. Or there's local Facebook groups, and you can just give comics away to kids in the neighborhood. And I gave a bunch of comics away to a kid, and he was just like so appreciative, and that was better than any amount of money that I could have got. Him getting a bunch of my Spider-Man comics. So like that's a better use of that to me because I've read it. I got what I wanted out of it. I think one of the big things and one of the great things about digital is if you wait and you get a trade, you're getting a trade like a $20 trade for $4. That's one thing. If you're going to try to read monthly, what you're doing, mail order, is probably key. I have just a ridiculous comic shop, which gives a 35% discount, which is not common for local comic shops whatsoever. So if you're doing
a diamond in the rough,
that's a diamond in the rough. So if you're doing like a mail order, or if you happen to have a situation like mine, it makes sense to read comics and paper. But if not, I wouldn't be buying as much stuff as I was if I was paying full price. Absolutely not. That does not make sense on a budgetary scale at all. I would be completely.
That's a great point
digital.
Because if I got a discount for pre-ordering digital, like I did for having a pull list at an LCS, that would also get me to purchase more digital. For sure.
I watch a lot of channels and people complain about comics, and I think there's a fundamental financial ramification of how much you're paying for a comic and what your enjoyment is. I really do. I'll tell you one thing. I'm enjoying that Salvador LaRocca Aliens comic a lot right now because I'm not paying for it.
Hell yeah,
and I'm
me
saving
too.
$2 in issues, and it's fantastic.
Yep.
And like even just there's older stuff, man. Like I do like I've gone back and just read some old Daredevil and Punisher, and I'm like, man, I don't even need like modern comics. There is so much on here that I can read. Like I don't even need it. So yeah, I think it's just it's an amalgamation. I think you're right. It's whatever your percentage is, if you're 50-50 or 70-30, I think we're always going to want that tangible thing for some books, whether it's a prestige thing like the Three Jokers or something like that. Like when that came out, I was like, I want that in paper. I like Jason Fabok art. I want to hold that, see it in my hands. Literally, like you said, when you were a kid, I had that summer experience. I walked right out to the front porch and I sat there and I read that like a kid. And Chris would be like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, So
it sounds to me, I'm gonna just put a bow on this topic.
Put a bow on it. Wrap
of paper versus digital, because we're in agreement here, and I think like most things in life, the answer here is balance, and it's about finding the right balance for the individual. You can make great arguments for either side, and I think these two things coexist together in whatever ratio works for that individual person. And I think that's 100%. Where we're at in the topic of paper versus digital. Not as contentious of an episode as one may have expected based on the title. But I guarantee at some point we're going to argue about something. It just wasn't this.
I don't know, man. I feel like we might come to the middle more than we might think, but I think it would have been a more contentious argument until last Wednesday. That like changed things, man. I think that comics. I think that Comixology drop really changed things.
Yeah.
I mean, I like I said, man, this was just one of the most disgraceful things I've seen. I just don't. I don't know.
This man's beside himself.
I'm beside myself.
He's losing sleep. I am too, for different reasons.
I'm losing sleep and I'm losing bucks. So I'm not the only one.
All right. I think that's it. I think we've covered what we're gonna cover on this one. So if you listened to the audio, thank you. We also upload these to YouTube. If you only watched on YouTube, thank you. We also have this podcast available on all streaming platforms. This is the first episode, so we'll see where this takes us.
Love it.
We'll see.
We'll see.
All right. Well, thanks.